Hello and welcome to another DDI CADcast. I'm your host Joseph Richter, and today we're going to talk about SOLIDWORKS 2014 What's New for Drawings. This will be part 2 of 3. Also, what's new for SOLIDWORKS 2014, we now have the ability to align auxiliary views horizontal, either clockwise or counterclockwise, to the drawing sheet. This also includes any section views that were taken at an angle. So if you needed to align your auxiliary views for clarity with normal to the drawing sheet, we now have the ability to do that. In addition, they've overhauled the symbol library dialog box majorly. They've expanded the size, including a preview pane that shows you all of the symbols that are available in the given category. This will make it much easier to grab the symbol that you want much quicker because, again, visually you'll be able to see it. And probably my favorite new button that they added to this symbol library dialog box is a shortcut to the Windows character map. So this Windows character map gives you access to all the special characters that are not found on your keyboard or perhaps in this library. For example, the ohms symbol, if you're doing an electrical schematic, you can find the ohm symbol within Windows Character Map. So for those of you that have seen my tech tip under ddicad.com/tech center, you know that you can go into that character map, select the special character that you want to use, copy that to the clipboard, and then simply insert it into your note. Back again over here in the new SOLIDWORKS 2014, you can see that I have a section view taken on angle, and the new option here is align drawing view. I can align horizontal to the sheet clockwise or counterclockwise. So when you do that, you'll notice that it rotates the view, and again I'll do that to my auxiliary view as well. You'll note that when you generate that rotation, SOLIDWORKS shows you how much that view has been rotated. And then, of course, to complete this drawing, you would go ahead and break the alignment and then align vertically by origin. And now these views are lined up again. The next big enhancement to talk about is when adding notes. The symbol library has been overhauled. Specifically, when I go to add a symbol here, it gives me a new pop-up dialog that allows me to specify one of these symbols. In addition to that, when I go to more symbols, it brings you the expanded symbol library dialog box. And within here, it allows me to specify my category for my symbols. And it even shows you which file location it's pulling the symbol library from. And then probably my favorite button here, the character map, which takes me to the Windows character map, and now I can browse through the Windows character maps here and pick a special character that's not otherwise available in my default symbol library. Now, what's significant about specifying the file location here is just the fact that if you've taken the time to develop your own symbol libraries, you can go into Tools Options and specify your file locations for symbol libraries. And then, of course, build a Copy Settings Wizard profile to share with all of your other users on your network, provided this is pointing at a common network location. And for SOLIDWORKS 2014 What's New, the dimensions got a lot of attention here. So we now have complete control over the extension lines within our dimensions. So we can do things like right-click on a dimension line and set that extension line, that dimension extension line, to be a centerline font. This will be helpful for dimensioning to holes, and this will show the reader of the blueprint that you are again dimensioning to a center line. Aside from just setting that extension line to show center lines, we can assign separate line styles to different dimension line elements. So if you've come from AutoCAD and you miss the ability to change the extension lines and the witness lines all to different line fonts, we now have that expanded ability to do that, including the ability to set that up in your document templates. In addition to this, we now have soft snaps for angular dimensions. So if I add an angular dimension to a drawing view with a linear dimension, the angular dimension will now snap to that linear dimension, and while snapping to that linear dimension, if you drag it, it will also index along the radius there and jump every 15 or 30 degrees or whatever is set under Tools Options. Keep in mind this does need to be aligned with a linear dimension in order to get the angular snaps to pick up. And now we have a new dimension type called angular running dimensions, and this is similar to an ordinate dimension for linear dimensions, only this would be an ordinate dimension style for angular dimensions. In addition to that, they've added a enhancement for virtual sharps in the fact that now when you're creating a dimension, you can right click on a drawing view line and specify find intersection, in which case you can locate the two edges to define the virtual sharp, all without leaving the dimension tool. So you can do that to dimension between virtual sharps, which in the past you would have had to generate the virtual sharp first and then add the dimension to it. Continuing on, we now can dimension 2 points on the same arc. So if I needed to know quadrant to quadrant on an arc, you can now do that in a drawing. And finally, for dimensions, we now have the ability to split dimension text. A popular use of this, especially when you're using the ISO standard, you might have your primary units on top of the dimension line, and then right below the dimension line you would have your dual units. So you have the ability now to show text above and below that dimension line. Not limited to dual dimensions, but including dimension notes. So the dimension properties now include a text box above and below the dimension line. The next great enhancement to talk about here in SOLIDWORKS 2014 is the ability to right-click on the extension line of your dimension and set that extension line as a center line. So this will really come in handy when you're going to dimension to the center of a part. And of course in the past we would have had to hide that extension line and have a center line on our drawing. That has gone away. Okay, the next enhancement to describe here is when you click on the dimension, you can check out the Leaders tab and you can set a unique line style for both the leader line as well as the extension line. Now both of these are calling back to the document display, so this enhancement has also been propagated back to the Tools options for document properties and the given dimension type. So here you could set the default line styles for the linear dimension in your document template. And while I'm in here, I want to mention the fact that we are in fact in the ISO standard. And as long as your ISO standard is set to solid leader and align text, we now have new options that allow newly created dimensions to split text position. And in this case I'm showing dual units display, in which case it shall now split my dual units when I add a new linear dimension. For the next dimension enhancement, when I add a new dimension with an angle that is adjacent to a linear dimension, you'll now notice that it will snap to the linear dimension. So I no longer have to eyeball it, it will snap to it. In addition to that is the exciting new dimension called angular running dimension. This is kind of like an ordinate dimension but for angles. So I can specify my 0 and then just click on the given edges to add my angular dimension. What's more is if I want to add to that running angular dimension, you can right click and specify Add to Running Dimension. And in this case, as I've gone to the far side of the part, if I wanted my 0, 0 to denote both right and left, when you go to the leaders here, you can see that you can run it bidirectionally. In addition to that, if you want the extension line to run to the center, perhaps you hold Control to grab all of your dimensions and then set extension line extends from the center. The next exciting enhancement to dimensions deals with creating a virtual sharp on the fly. So in the past we would have had to generate our virtual sharp manually, then added our dimension, but now in SOLIDWORKS 2014 we can right click on an edge and specify Find Intersection and then select the other edge to make that virtual sharp from. Again, you just right click on an edge and select Find Intersection, pick the other edge, and here you get your linear dimension. And I did mention the splitting of the dual units on all newly created linear dimensions with the ISO standard when your text position is solid leader and align text. Now as I zoom out here, you'll notice that on these other linear dimensions they did not follow suit. As I mentioned, that document setting was only on newly created dimensions. For existing dimensions, we now have the setting at the bottom here where it says dual dimensions that I can split. Aside from that, I also mentioned that you can put text below. So here under dimension text, I can go ahead and type my text below. And then the last thing to cover here for dimension enhancements is the ability to dimension between 2 points on the same arc. So you hold Shift, you grab one edge, and then you can grab the other on the same arc. So this is sure to come in handy if you run into any situations like this. And for annotations in SOLIDWORKS 2014, they've included some support for standards. The first item here, ASME Y14.5 2009, for the geometric dimensioning and tolerancing feature control frame. They have made the improvement to the feature control frame annotation to allow for combining multiple geometric symbols into a single composite frame. Although we could do something similar to this in SOLIDWORKS 2009, you'll recognize that once you specified a composite frame, then it wouldn't let you add any additional geometric tolerance symbols within that feature control frame annotation. In addition to this, we can now insert a symbol for the transition at the end of a selected field within the feature control frame. And the next improvement for annotations includes support for the Japanese Industrial Standard weld symbols. They've added 6 new weld symbols to the Japanese Industrial Standard weld symbol library, including edge, keyhole, scarf, stud, penetration, and backing. Thanks again for joining us on another DDI CADcast. I'm your host, Joseph Richter, and please be sure to check out more tech tips and CADcasts on our YouTube channel, found at youtube.com/DDICAD, or our tech blog at ddicad.com/tech center.